There are two different flavors of Microsoft Windows XP: Windows XP Home Edition, Windows XP Professional. Windows XP Home Edition is designed with the home user in mind and enables users to create and edit general-purpose documents, play multimedia content, browse the Internet, and use email applications. The Home Edition only contains a subset of the features provided in the Professional Edition. A Home Edition PC cannot act as a remote desktop server, nor can it be a member of a Windows NT or Active Directory domain. Windows XP Professional is designed with the business user in mind. It provides features such as enhanced device driver verification, system preparation tool SysPrep, Microsoft Management Console MMC, remote desktop, support for 2 processors, native file encryption, and other features that are not available in the Home Edition. Both flavors of Windows XP have the same minimum hardware requirements: Intel Pentium or Pentium-compatible processor 233 MHz or higher, 64 MB of RAM, 1.5 GB hard disk with at least 650 MB of free hard disk space, video adapter and monitor with SVGA resolution or better, keyboard and mouse or other compatible pointing device, CD-ROM or DVD-ROM drive if installing from CD. Before you install Windows XP, you should check that the basic input-output system BIOS version is the latest one offered by the motherboard manufacturer. This is because features such as plug-and-play and Advanced Configuration and Power Interface ACPI are important to the functionality of Windows XP. Once you have verified that the computer meets all the minimum hardware requirements, you need to ensure that the computer's hardware appears on the Hardware Compatibility List HCL. The HCL is a list of computers and peripheral hardware that have been rigorously tested to ensure their compatibility with Windows XP. The HCL on the Windows XP installation CD becomes outdated quickly, so you check the most recent list at the address shown. Microsoft licenses Windows XP to its customers. When customers pay for the product, they are purchasing a license to use it according to the End User License Agreement, EULA. There are 7 types of software licenses offered by Microsoft: Academic, Charity, and Government Licensing, Enterprise Agreement Licensing, Enterprise Subscription Agreement Licensing, Full Packaged Product, OEM Licensing, Open Licensing, Select Licensing. This type of licensing is specifically designed for educational institutions, charities, and government customers. Microsoft offers software at reduced rates to organizations that qualify for the software. This type of licensing is offered to corporate customers who use centralized purchasing and require 250 or more licenses. This type of licensing is designed for corporate customers requiring 250 or more licenses on a subscription basis. A full packaged product version is also known as a retail version and comes in a box. This license is intended for consumers and small businesses that require fewer than 5 licenses. The term OEM means Original Equipment Manufacturer and applies to companies such as Dell and HP that manufacture and sell computers that have Windows XP pre-installed. Microsoft sells OEM versions of Windows XP to these companies. OEM product keys will not work on retail versions. Retail product keys will not work on OEM versions. This type of licensing is for corporate entities, academic institutions, charities, and government customers that require at least 5 or more licenses. Select licensing is designed for corporate entities, academic institutions, charities, and government customers that require 250 or more licenses. Microsoft licensing is offered in 3 different modes: per server, per device or per user, per processor. When you install Windows XP on a computer, Microsoft grants you a Client Access License, CAL, to use it on that specific machine. Per server licensing requires that you have a CAL for each user or device that accesses a particular server. In this mode, the CAL is associated with this specific server. Using this method, you must purchase enough CALs for the maximum numbers of clients that may connect to that server. The per device or per user option requires a CAL to be associated with a user, device, or computer. Using this method, a client can connect to any server on the network as long as the client has a CAL for each type of server being accessed, such as an Exchange or SQL server. With per processor licensing, no CALs are required because the server is already licensed based on the number of processors installed. An example is SQL Server 2000. During the installation of Windows XP, you are required to supply a specific 25-character volume license key, VLK. For retail and OEM versions, you also need to activate Windows XP when you have completed its installation. This is known as Microsoft Product Activation, MPA, or Windows Product Activation, WPA, and helps to reduce software piracy. Activation is not required on other Windows XP versions. Microsoft offers a 30-day grace period after you have installed Windows XP and Office 2003. With Windows XP, you need to activate it before the time period elapses. Otherwise, it will stop functioning. If you do not activate Office 2003, the software goes into reduced functionality mode, in which you cannot, for example, create any new files or edit existing files. With Windows Server 2003, you have a 60-day grace period, after which you can only access the server using the administrator account under Safe Mode. On which versions of Windows XP licensing must you run Windows Product Activation? You can install Windows XP in either of two ways, attended or unattended. An attended installation is an interactive process and requires you to provide responses to the prompts from the setup program. You can install Windows XP from a number of sources: a bootable CD, setup files stored on a network share, or setup files stored on a local hard disk. If you are carrying out a new installation and your computer cannot boot from a CD, you can still start the installation of Windows XP by using a boot disk, such as a Windows 98 startup disk, which contains the device drivers for the CD. You access the i386 directory on the Windows XP CD and run the winnt.exe executable, which can be launched from an MS-DOS environment. An unattended installation is an automatic procedure you can use when you need to install Windows XP on several computers simultaneously, using standardized settings. To do this, you create a special text file called an answer file that contains the necessary configuration parameters that are required by the setup program. Match the methods of installing Windows XP to their characteristics. The Windows XP installation process has 6 main stages: text mode phase, GUI phase, dynamic update, preparing installation, installing Windows, finalizing installation. The first stage of the installation process runs in a text mode environment. The setup program copies the files from the CD-ROM into a temporary folder on the local computer's hard disk. When the copying process is complete, the computer reboots. The second stage of the installation process occurs in GUI mode, where the setup program accesses the overall configuration of the computer and detects the installed hardware. In the third stage of the installation process, the setup program attempts to connect to the Internet to search for any updated Microsoft installation files. During the fourth stage of the installation process, you will be prompted for configuration parameters for the system. This stage is interactive and will not continue until you have provided the necessary configuration information. In the fifth stage of the installation process, the setup program implements the configuration parameters you specified in the preparing installation stage. Once this stage completes, the system reboots. In the sixth and final stage of the installation process, the setup program accesses the display settings and sets the optimal screen resolution for the monitor. If you are installing a retail or an OEM version of Windows XP, the Windows Out-of-Box Experience (OOBE) launches. This helps you to register and activate your copy of Windows XP, set up an Internet connection, both optional, and create a minimum of one user account. During the Windows XP installation process, you will need to make many choices, the most important being how your hard disk space will be partitioned and the file system your partitions will use. Disk partitioning takes the physical hard disk and creates logical partitions on it. Suppose, for example, that you have a 120 gigabyte hard disk. You can partition it into two logical drives, a C drive, which could have a capacity of 80 gigabytes, and a D drive, which could have a capacity of 40 gigabytes. The factor that determines your disk partitioning scheme is the type of file system you choose. Windows XP Professional offers 3 file systems to use: FAT16, FAT32, and TFS.